We have a quorum. We'll call the meeting to order. And the first order is roll call, and Sinya.
Present.
Jim.
Present.
Nia.
Present.
Hey, an agenda change. We're going to have one change to the agenda in the non-action items. Item 3, we're going to move that up to the first item, and we have people here, and they can speak, and we can get them home. Any oral communications? Okay, and then next, approval of the minutes from the last meeting of February 21st. Have a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve.
I second.
Hey, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey, aye, and the,
Because I wasn't here.
okay,
But I can
thank you.
approve if it needs to.
Yes. Okay, staff comments.
So we actually
I
need
just
to-
want to clarify, because it doesn't pass with only 3 approvals.
I mean, could I approve it even if I wasn't here?
The attendance is not mandatory to be able to approve the
Oh, okay,
minutes.
then I'll approve it. Then I didn't know that.
Thank you for the clarification. Sorry. So it's been a little while since we met. I just wanted to share some images from the Coverly Stock Evening, which completely sold out in advance. We had people standing at the door on standby waiting to get in. We had more than 60 people who were so excited. The food was delicious. There were 2 soups. And we had 6 artists who made really compelling pitches for temporary installations at Coverly campus. And fun was had by all. And here you get some more of the images. And we had some of the Coverly artists, if you look in the background, they installed some of their artwork just to have artwork up in the space. And one of the artists did actually sell a piece that night, which is always kind of nice to see. And so here are our winners once it was announced. Do we have one of the money shot? So, so they did win the funding. We're doing a campus walkthrough next week to sort of talk through some of the logistics. But basically what they're looking at is doing a project that is the stories and the faces of Coverly. And so doing a series of interviews, who all is there, what kind of work are they doing, and having some, as they announced it, sort of JR-like looking images that perhaps might be wheat pasted, we don't know what they're gonna be, in a few different key spaces. And there may be recordings of some of their stories and or it could be wall text. So we are looking to have that implemented hopefully in June. But that was the project, and it was a lot of fun.
All right.
And Chair Miyagi was there.
I was there. It was a lot of fun.
And Vice Chair
I can't
Corden
wa-
was there, too.
Yeah, and when is the next one going to be?
Well, that was the question people kept asking, but there is a lot of work that goes into organizing these. We could talk about doing it again, but maybe not weekly, as some people suggested. So the next item was Public Alchemy. So it was also another really successful event. This is the community exhibition, so it's not curated, just local artists are invited to come bring an artwork that is hung and displayed, and people really appreciated it. There were a number of artists who it was the first time they had exhibited. We had the son of one of the previous Coverly artists who was able to exhibit there, so here we have some multi-generational exhibitions. And it was a really fun night, and it was a great turnout. And then Artist Mel Day did some critique sessions with any of the artists who wanted to, and I think there were about 12 that participated in that as well, and that took place on Coverly Community Day. And then that's it for our images. The only other things I wanted to announce briefly is that we are in the final stages of interviews for our summer intern. We had some really fantastic applicants this year, so we're excited to hopefully introduce a new intern to you at the next meeting. And then we just launched a call for a new part-time person to replace Brittany. For those of you who may not know, she is leaving to go to graduate school this summer. So we're really sad to lose her because she's been such a superstar. But we have launched that call, so if you happen to know any arts administrators who might be interested in that, please pass it along.
Where is she going to school and what sort of degree?
Loyola Marymount, actually.
Everybody's going down there.
Good old LMU, all right.
In arts administration? Sorry.
She's getting a master's in arts therapy.
All right. Going to be a big loss and big shoes to fill. And we wish her all the best. And we have a special presentation from Commissioner Taylor about the Artist Light and Public Space Artist Talk at Montalvo.
Sure, so you'll have to forgive me because it's been a few months. So you might have to add a few things on. So I brought actually a little booklet that came, that was given out. So basically, there was an exhibit at Montalvo in, where is it? It's in Saratoga, about light. Bruce Monroe was their featured guest artist. But then during the event, the exhibition, there was a talk with our own Barbara Goldstein. I'm getting there. And also Jim Campbell. And then there's another artist who I thought was in here, but she wasn't listed, from Pittsburgh. But so Jim Campbell was in talks with her. Primarily, he ended up talking a lot about a piece that he did, which many of you have seen, the Salesforce Tower. But basically, their discussion was about artists on light and public space. And it was really interesting because, so primarily they talked about just various ways that one can use light in public space. And a lot of the examples that they were giving was like alleyways, which we've done some of that, which was really exciting to see that in action. The other artist that was featured, I don't know if you can pull her up. Do you remember her name? Andrea Polly. So she did some interesting work around climate change and light, which reminded me a lot of the piece near the Visa building, using map and light and just charting various different ideas and the climate. You might have to remind me a little bit, because my memory is not so great. But I think and then Jim talked a little bit about the challenges that he's facing with the Salesforce building, and that a lot of people have been saying, oh, well, when the Giants won, you should have put orange and black. And he's like, well, that's not really the purpose of it. It's he really is trying to figure out what the goals of his art piece is, but really how to, so to speak, separate commercial from artistic ideas. And it was just interesting because we've been doing a lot of this discussion, and I think we're on the forefront with the Palo Alto Art Commission of just really thinking about various ways that you can use light in art. And there's no one way to do it, but I was impressed that we've done a lot of their things that they've put into place, like alleyways, and also this other artist in Pittsburgh, she did a really interesting piece on one of the Pittsburgh bridges, using, and I'm blanking now, Nadia, do you mind adding it was something with, not propellers, but it was.
Yeah, I believe they're like weather turbines.
Yeah, that's right, weather turbines. And that was an interesting way of using technology and art and light. When the turbines move, light's turned on, which I thought was really kind of fun. And it made me actually think of maybe we can do that at University Avenue tunnels. Who knows? I don't know if we want to use turbines, but it's something to think about. But I think the other big takeaway is a lot of it is it's education and just figuring out ways that we can, not only as the commission, but even as the city, just educate people about the art that we're doing and why we choose to do and to display the art that we are displaying and commissioning. And I think Blue Trees is one example. A lot of people still, aren't quite exactly sure why we're doing Blue Trees, but I think it's something that as long as you educate people as to why you're doing it, they're more likely to say, okay, this makes sense and I agree with you, or I don't know, but let's have this friendly kind of conversation. And that's pretty much it. I'm happy to answer any questions, comments, thoughts, but I apologize. It's been quite a while since I saw it, but I thought it was really nice just to see that we've been implementing a lot of their ideas and thoughts. So,
Hey, thank you, Neil.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Nia.
I'll pass this around if you want to take a look at it.
And we do have two big light shows, the Salesforce Tower and the Bay Bridge. Two really big light projects in the Bay Area. Okay, we're going to go to non-action item 3, which is 565 Hamilton Avenue. 565. I can put it in focus. I need my glasses.
No, it'll just stay on. It'll stay on. So we have Danielle Fox from Slate Art Consulting here to discuss the Hamilton Webster Public Art Project. This is an initial review, so there's no action expected to be taken at this time, but it's to introduce the project and gather any feedback from the commission as they go through their artist selection process. And so with that, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I know that you've all seen this, but I think the formality is just that we walk through it again. So thank you, Nadia, for turning the slides and we can go forward. I want to just start by introducing Slate, and the reason I put this slide in is because I know that some of you may have gone to our website and it can be a little confusing what we do because we do a lot of things. As long as it has to do with art, we probably do it. Our business Slate Art LLC was formed by merging an art gallery and an commercial art consulting business, which we did in 2013. My business partner, Shelley Berry, who's actually here in back, had her own commercial art consulting business, and I had an art gallery, and we teamed up as partners, and we have one overarching company, but it still does two very distinct things. As gallerists, we rep a certain specific group of artists, and we look for opportunities to place their work. Art consulting being a little different, where we start with the opportunities and then try to find the right artists. And occasionally there might be a crossover where artists from our gallery roster fit the mold, but more often than not, and I would say really never with sculpture because we only rep one sculptor who does tabletop. More often than not, we're looking all over the Bay Area or all over the country for the right artists for the job. So we're probably best known for large-scale commissions of two-dimensional works, and this is a project, I just realized that it says 400 Lakeside, I think it's 300 Lakeside, but Gensler gutted this lobby and redid it, and we got involved very early, about over a year before installation, to talk about what kinds of paintings would be the right kinds of paintings to put in the space, to work through first with the architectural team and then with the developers to refine a list of 40 down to 3, and then to go through the formal process of commissioning them. But we've also had plenty of contact with three-dimensional work, a few being commissions that we've commissioned for private and corporate clients, and then we also have had many opportunities to display sculpture, some at our gallery and some in lobbies where we've had contracts to do rotating sculpture exhibitions. Public art is something that's new to us. It's sort of just started landing in our lap due to a lot of relationships that we already had in the architecture and developer communities in the Bay Area. But we've got 4 projects on right now, or this would be the 4th. The first one is a brass metal screen, which is actually just got approved this week, so we're just finalizing that project. And it's actually inside of a building, inside a big plate glass window, because the building was designed and actually almost completely built. Well, it was designed prior to the new public art regulations in Oakland coming into effect, and it was almost completely built before the developers realized that they actually still had an obligation that had sort of come in midstream to the process. So our solution was to create something that was inside rather than outside, because they hadn't created an exterior opportunity for it. And it's a quarter-inch solid brass plates that have been laser cut with an abstract design that reflects the urban geography of uptown Oakland. So it very specifically relates to the area around it and helps to celebrate and kind of anchor that location. And the building has a very kind of elegant design, and there's also, a lot of surrounding Art Deco buildings in that neighborhood that we enjoyed referencing with this choice. Not far away, we're also commissioning an artist who's actually works with paper cutouts, and he's designed this artwork that will surround, this was an early design, it's evolved, but they will be powder-coated metal platelets that it attached to this gate surround. It's an entryway to the building. And then I'm also working on a 7-story high ceramic printed glass project that will be on the facade of a building, and we've contracted a ceramic sculptor to design tile that will go around the facade, around the entryway of a building as well. So these are some of most of the projects that we're working on right now in Oakland are very architecturally integrated rather than freestanding. And that's just because most of the buildings were really already designed, and because economically everyone's building to the perimeter. So we're looking for creative ways to bring the art in into the architecture. So for your project, we go on and look at the site. Thank you, Nadia. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's right down the street at the corner of Hamilton and Webster. And it's right at this kind of important place where the neighborhood transitions pretty immediately from the commercial district to a residential district. And I know that the developers and the owners have been, and the architects have been very mindful of that in designing a building that has both office space on one side and then residential on the other, so it almost literally embodies that transition. And
Which corner is it, the one with the yellow building?
That's correct.
yes. So there's 2 opportunities or 2 locations that have been identified for the sculpture, location A and B. And originally we had hoped to place 2 sculptures, but the budget hasn't, the budget's very limited. And so right now, the way we're positioning it is if we can only do one, we'd like to place it in position A, which is a little closer to the street. And as we look at the next couple slides, you'll also see that it can be seen from both the Hamilton side and the Webster side. So it feels like it offers more opportunities for people to enjoy it. If we find a sculptor who's, willing to work with us and give us 2 pieces for our, I think we have $73,000 for artwork. And it's not impossible, but we don't want that to limit the quality of the work either. So, so if we can get 2, we'll get 2. If we can only have 1, we will. We are proposing location A as our preferred location for the public art allocation. So this is looking at it from the Webster Street side, and this is actually the entrance into the building. So you see this little pavilion, which is very open on both sides, but it does create a kind of a nice sort of contained space that sort of frames out the work in a very nice way. And on the right-hand side, they're proposing a little bench. You see that little floating slab on the right? So there would be a place to sit and view it, and my understanding is that that would be open to the public to absolutely go sit there and enjoy it if they wanted to as well. The sculpture that you're looking at is just something that the architects put into their original renderings as a placeholder. So, and then this is location B. So you can see that it's set back a little further. And because it has the gate behind it, it doesn't really pop out as much as the piece in location A, which had the board form concrete behind it. So for the look and the feel, we've spent some time with the architects and designers and developers looking at a lot of different types and styles and materials of sculpture. And what we narrowed it down to is that we anticipate something that's made out of steel, possibly bronze if we could afford it, but most likely steel. It'll definitely be metal. It'll probably be steel. Let me just find that page so we can look at that picture. So we don't. There's an interest in having something that is a dark brown color. I don't know if Nadia, maybe you could move back to some of the renderings so we can just see the logic of that, because there is the dark brown trim on the fascia and a lot of the metalwork on the building. And so it kind of ties into that and creates a bit of a rhythm. It wouldn't be like the exact same brown, but it relates to the architecture in that way. And it would create the contrast that we're looking for so that it jumped out against the concrete background. Finish, we've discussed either a Corten, which would be a sort of natural weathering steel, or something painted that would have a clear coat to seal it. Potentially could be a patina, but I know they take a lot more maintenance as well. The style is probably, well, we know it's either going to be abstract or it'll be a very abstract human form, and we'll run through the pictures in a minute. For the shape, we're seeking something that has a substantial volume and a really interesting silhouette, because again, we want it to kind of catch your eye as you're driving by or walking by, so we need that contrast and that interesting shape so that it can be read at a distance. We have identified some sizes, some maximums, 6 feet tall, 5 feet deep, 8 feet long. For this location, the preferred orientation would be horizontal. What you're looking at there as an example is maybe barely horizontal, but it is a little wider than it is tall to relate to the shape of the pavilion space that it is in. The piece will be bolted to a concrete pad, and it's very likely that, we would work with the landscape designers as well, but probably the landscaping will just cover up the footings, so it'll look pretty seamless. And then with the lighting, there's no lighting in this design, but the really lovely thing about having it in this kind of semi-covered area is that there are opportunities to light it both from the bottom and from the top. So I think we can really make it stand out nicely in the evening, especially. Okay, and then just going through some of the styles that we had narrowed down to. this is a more blocky geometric approach, which perhaps relates a little more closely to what the architects had put in their original renderings. And then these are some of examples of a more fluid approach that's much more curvilinear. And we actually liked this as a kind of counterpoint to the rectilinear composition of the building. And or if we went with something figurative, it would still be very abstract in this kind of a way. Moving on to the approach, I won't read this whole page, but our plan is for, once we've got some, agreement from you, I will pull together a list of artists who work in these different styles, probably about 10 of them, and then working with the architects, start to narrow them down. I'll do a little advanced qualification work, contacting the artists, making sure they're, they would be interested, if we were interested, that they have the time in their schedule right now, because sometimes, they get busy with other projects, and that they could work within our budget. So I would do all that at the earlier stage, and then bring a group of qualified artists to propose to the architecture and development team. We would hash through that, narrow it down to 2 or 3 probably, to then invite to present proposals to us, putting the onus on them to do a little design work and present some ideas, and we would be paying them a small honorarium for that as well. Once we had agreed, based on those artist proposals, we will select the one that we'd prefer, or at the very least rank them if it's close, and then bring them back to you for some more feedback, and hopefully accomplishing all of that by the end of this summer. I don't know if you take August off, but if you're all going to be here, that would be our target, to come back with a very specific proposal at your August meeting. We have time, because as you know, the project is in its early phases, but I also don't like to, if you select your artist and then wait a really long time, sometimes things change, as you might have experienced with artists' lives, and then they're not available and you have to start again. So my advice to my clients has been to move forward with the process, then move forward with the commissioning, and just not with a high pressure speed, but keep it moving. And then even if we end up having a completed sculpture a year before, they've agreed to store it. So this allows us to have something that gives you time to consider and feedback, and it gives, but still have a specific plan all approved before Wilson Meeting goes in for the permit sometime this winter.
All right, thank you for presentation and attending the meeting tonight. Any questions or comments from the commission?
What's the envelope of the space you have? How high is the
I think the ceiling is 10 feet,
10 feet?
yeah, on the podium level.
Is that like a board form concrete, or it's not like travertine marble?
No.
Too bad. And the wood, is that going to be wood above it? And then what's the wood? Do you know what it is, like Ipe or
I
oak?
don't believe it is Ipe, but I can't say for sure.
Okay. Given that it's covered, have you thought about doing something in material other than metal? Could it be wood?
I th-
I don't wanna, like, throw a wrench, but I'm
yeah,
just kinda
yeah,
curious.
no, I mean,
It's a space that's
I
protected.
still wouldn't, it's protected from the top, but in the Bay Area, we still get a lot of weather
Yeah.
from the side as, you know, the fog comes in and out
Yep.
and,
Okay. Well, my 2 cents, we'll
Yeah.
see what everyone has. So I prefer to not do something that mimics the hard edge format. Would prefer to do something more organic, and I kind of like the Henry Moore-esque things that you had at the end, rather than, you know, looping things. So I feel like you see, like, this is like such a corporate art, and it's like, I live a few blocks from here, so this is my neighborhood, so I personally, I will see this
Great.
all the time.
Yeah.
And it just, sometimes it feels like it's kind of like a
a
throwaway.
little anonymous.
Yeah, it just feels like, okay, we had to comply, and I'd rather it not be a compliance piece and try to do something that's a bit more interesting. These are okay, but it would be great to do something that is a bit more organic, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would just echo Jim's comment, you know, in terms of creating an art piece where the color scheme picks off of the building itself. I mean, I think you can go either way. It could just end up blending so well that you just stop seeing it.
So I have a question and then a comment. So you said it's both residential and commercial? So is this residential or a commercial side?
This is the residential side.
So I think you can push the boundaries more. I think this is I've seen it before. And I really don't think people are gonna stop and look at it. And I think when you're, especially in a residential space, it's very uncomfortable for people to walk in there. That's when it's not their space. And even Palo Alto is getting better. I grew up here, so, and I live here, and I do know that it's just, people are very sensitive with space. I mean, and it's about, you want people to feel like, okay, it's okay to like walk up there. And I don't know if people will feel comfortable walking up there. And what I would love to see is something more outside of that space. So even in the greenery, somewhere that's more safe. I think you have to take a risk, and I think that there needs to be more risk. And I like Henry Moore. I even think you can push the boundary even more with Henry Moore. He's okay, but I think
Yeah. It's not gonna happen.
I really, and I'm gonna be very strong about this. I love the yellow house. The part, and it's hard because there's a lot of changes in Palo Alto. I really like the quaint and people. I mean, that's what Palo Alto was known for. I understand things change in building. It might be a building code issue. I don't know, but I feel like the yellow it's a pop, and I think this is just too somber, and I think it's just. Yeah, if you're gonna change the neighborhood a little bit, you might as well, with the art change, make something a little bit more exciting. And the other thing, I was periodically, I go up to, for the day to the wine country, and there's this place called Hall Winery, and they have this gigantic bunny rabbit, this metal, and every time I drive past it or walk past it, I see it, and I'm like, so cute. Like, it's up on top of the vineyard, and it's whimsical, it's fun, and I think that's what you need, something whimsical and fun, and something that's not hidden, or feels like you're intruding in someone's backyard. So I would even say maybe even something metal, and I really feel like the examples you showed, I can see where, it's sometimes, it's nice to keep with the architecture, but I just think that if you're gonna spend the money, spend it with more whimsical, more exciting things, because we've seen this before. And I think one of the things we've been talking about with public art and art in general, I think, is to push the buttons. So that would be my suggestion.
So there were two things wrapped up in there. One was sort of the look and feel, and just pushing it to be more expressive and perhaps less conventional and more noticeable. The second was the location. So I'd maybe like to hear how some of the rest of you weigh in on those two issues.
And I appreciate your comments about location A versus location B. And I think I appreciate your preference that if we can only get one, that you want to put it in a more visible location, and that being location A. And so we're kind of looking at this is location A, and just piggybacking on Nia's comment, if it could even be more visible, of course, we welcome that. But if it can't be more visible than where you are intending to place it, then perhaps the artwork needs to be more visible. Otherwise, we wouldn't see it, particularly if you're just matching it to the building. It just ends up blending in a little too much.
Can you cite it, so you have here, I mean, if you've said on the site, then okay, but is this, I don't know, this could be treated with some other greenery here, and could you cite it closer? I don't know what the square footage you have to work with is.
We have a lot of constraints on that frontage related to our biofiltration measures.
Okay.
And miscellaneous other items, and so, and then the other factor that drove us towards that location is just being able to protect the art.
Yeah.
From both the elements and vandalism, but still making sure it's super visible from both of the street frontages. So those were some of the considerations that led us to where we ended up.
She needs a microphone. Can you move the
Oh,
microphone?
sorry. Be closer.
So I think that by picking, Hamilton is a higher trafficked street than Webster, so you'll see more people walking past it, so I think it's great that it's visible well, I think it's probably easier from Hamilton as you're walking back and forth than it is Webster.
Yeah, it's a corner of the building, yeah.
So there's another view from the Webster side, there's the Webster.
So it's farther, you're closer to it, or it feels like you're closer, maybe you're equidistant. I mean, in terms of material choices, kind of along the lines of what some of the things that Nia was saying, if you strayed away from trying to blend in color-wise in Core 10, what about doing something in acrylic with a color?
Yeah.
It could be,
Powder coat, right.
or powder-coated, yeah, powder-coated steel, but acrylic piece could be fun too,
Yeah.
just different material.
And I have another, first of all, I apologize, I didn't get to say thank you for the presentation. I know it took energy, so, and time and
It's
thought.
really well
So
done.
yeah, thank you. So my other, I guess, another thought I'm thinking now, and it's tricky because I know you want to be sensitive of the arts. I get that, and I appreciate that. But my other thought would be, so right on the opposite side, in that little, what looks like, this might not be there later, but like the little grassy area, but even something there where if people could even just walk up that staircase and be right there and see something, and take a photo off, that could be a nice location. Like right there.
Side of the wall.
Well, I don't know what it looks like it's could be a planter. Yeah.
Do you mean here?
No, the other, yeah, left. Yeah, like in there, in that area. I don't know exactly what
Here?
that is yeah, but it looks like it's there, the walkway is like there's something that you could be close enough where you're not touching it, but close enough where you can kind of see it and it might catch your eye. And I mean, the other thing too, I'm thinking is, have you thought about other things other than sculpture? Just curious if that was, I can't even think of what I'm thinking, but I mean, there's stuff, we've been talking a lot about light, we've been talking about, I mean, there's some really interesting environmental things with even doing, on the side of the Palo Alto Library, the Mitchell Park, they did, beautiful, I'm blanking on the name, excuse me, but they did, nice plants on the wall. And I mean, that's something like a design of some sort, environmental art of some form, I don't know.
There was a request to have something that would not require a lot of maintenance. You know, and that we could feel confident would last into the future without a lot of maintenance. If it was a bigger project, there might be a little more room for something more adventurous. Or cutting edge.
Yeah, well, one thing I'd like to see under, excuse me, under your selection approach, the note at the bottom. Lose the note. No pre-existing. You want something original, nothing pre-existing.
No? Okay.
You don't want something that's off the shelf that, you know, you go to another community and see the same thing. So that's my caution on that. You have the opportunity to have
Right.
original works, and I think you should jump at that.
I don't think you're thinking of like copying something. It's just be something that an artist would have already done as opposed to something that's on commission.
You know, that,
I don't know.
I've seen in other communities where they've bought stuff off the shelf, and you go to other places and you see almost the same thing. You know,
Yeah, so I think I would echo that just in terms of it not being an addition. But if it's not an
If
addition.
it's a unique
yeah.
piece that's already been made. I mean, I think my preference would be to commission, because I feel like that's how you get what the site and the location needs.
Instead of
But
trying to
if, but
fit
if there
something
was
in
some,
there.
but if there was something that was great, that would just simplify things, why make it complicated? And I'm thinking probably more my ideal situation would be, we'd find someone to commission a piece for location A, and maybe they would already have something in their studio that would be a suitable partner for location B, that because it was already made, we could fit it into the budget. But, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for your presentation, and I look forward to what comes from you, and
back in
good luck.
August.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Should be
The-
fun.
Are you the architect?
No, I'm the developer.
Developer, okay. What's the firm what's the name of your company?
Wilsamini,
And who's the
And-
architect?
Aiden Darling.
Oh, you know.
Aidlin Darling.
All right, next item, we'll go back to the action items, is the collection maintenance item?
Yes.
Allocation of funds.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a San Francisco architect there is.
Thank you.
It's like A-list firm. So the firm that's doing the building, again, I like the yellow building too, but Galen Darling they're really good.
It's a mixed-use building,
So just,
like the light stuff.
so just a brief comment. The project, they are doing their art at the same time as their architectural review board. They were at architectural review board this morning. And it was a very positive experience, so that's all good. And there's nothing that would impact the sites for the artwork.
This is not like Roger Cole slapped together.
Right.
That kind of
It certainly isn't the,
Mike.
no comment.
Hey, can I just, do you know the reason for the redoing of the building? Is it just because of I'm just,
Someone sold it.
no, but like, I mean, because you don't have to tear down a building, right? And they told, so it's like, but it just was sold, so it had nothing to do, we don't know, okay. No, because, I mean, this is something that's gonna keep coming up.
Okay,
I
well,
think
let's
we're gonna
let's
have new
stick with the
ones, so I was
agenda,
just curious.
okay?
Yeah, well, I just was
Okay.
curious.
Okay,
It's more of a-
continue. Nadia, please.
Thank you. Switching gears here a bit. So today we have two items on collection care to present to you. So first, I'd like to talk about Bruce Beasley's Arpeggio 5. So if you remember, the artwork is an arch-like granite form that makes a beautiful gateway to the Mitchell Park Community Center and Library. It was installed in 2013 to coincide with the opening of the new facility, and it really is a signature landmark for Midtown Palo Alto. So the piece consists of the main sculpture, which is sitting
Oh, good point.
on this. Thank you. Yeah, a little visual guide. Sitting the main piece, which is carved out of a single piece of granite and is positioned on a concrete base with anchoring pins to stabilize it. Skirt blocks surrounding the main sculpture partially resting on the concrete base as well. And then you'll see a series of accent blocks sort of flaring out in various directions away from the sculpture. So it appears that back in 2013, when the piece was installed, the soil surrounding the sculpture was not properly compacted. And over the course of the past years, and of course with the wet winter that we experienced this year, there was some significant soil settlement, uneven soil settlement, which exposed some of the gravel, and you see those like underneath sort of support blocks under the sculpture. So we observed that the soil underneath some of the skirt blocks that are partially resting on the base have receded. You can see that on this image. So there is no movement or instability to the skirt blocks. So the sculpture is absolutely structurally sound. However, we anticipate that further soil settlement, if untreated, will progress, and that might stress those skirt blocks, which may have a negative structural impact on the sculpture. So the current state of the slope surrounding the sculpture, shifted accent blocks and exposed skirt stones has changed the overlook of the sculptural composition, which really just affects the original intent of Bruce Beasley. So we reached out to the artist to inform him of the situation with the soil around the sculpture, and to consult him for his best advice on how we should approach this situation. So Bruce advised that the best way to address the issue and prevent any further movement would be by reestablishing the original gradual grade of the soil surrounding the sculpture. So we put a few heads together and consulted with our colleagues in Parks and Open Space. Also reached out to a number of professional contractors in the Bay Area. So we identified two various contractors. I should preface that this project would entail several phases. So professional art mover or shipper would have to reposition temporarily those accent blocks. Another contract would come in to reinforce, reestablish the original grade and enforce it with some base rock material. And then the mover will come back to carefully position those accent blocks in the original position, which will be sitting on those sort of like mini foundations to stabilize them in the future. So this the scope of the project, and today we are requesting the approval of funds in the amount of $9,500 to move forward with this soil repair project.
Okay, thank you, Nadia. Any questions?
So, is Bruce going to be involved in in this maintenance project to make sure that it's kind of put in the right place?
Yes, so he is informed about what's happening with the project right now. We will reach out to him when we have the date for when we're going to be positioning the accent blocks back. So if he's available, he's welcome to come on site and supervise that very intricate project.
Got it.
And just a point of clarification, it's not all of the surrounding stones that are being moved, it's only the ones that are partially on
And
that
vaping,
concrete
right?
base where it's pulling away from the main sculpture. The rest of them can settle with the soil, which was sort of what was intended.
Okay.
What was unexpected was that the ones that are immediately surrounding the sculpture, that soil would erode so quickly.
Okay.
So it's really just the ones that fit like puzzle pieces at the corners. So they will be carefully numbered, documented.
Got it, got it.
And set someplace for safekeeping while the work takes place to put the base rock in. And then those pieces just adjacent to the main sculpture will be replaced in their original placement.
Got it, got it. Now, as far as the soil replenishment, the things that we're doing this time, how do we make sure that the erosion is not going to be as fast as what's happening up to now?
Yeah, so the contractor who will be working to repair the grade will make sure that the new soil is properly compacted. And the base rock as well will be added in a few precise positions where we'll be moving those shifted accent blocks back to prevent any sliding or shifting in the future. So the slope will be reinforced.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Nadia. Okay, have a motion to approve this item.
I move to approve.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the next item is a collection maintenance item as well.
All right.
Photo credit to Mike Sabo on that one.
Yes, absolutely. My bad. So that picture was taken right after the unveiling ceremony for the piece. So we're looking at Confluence, which is a water sculpture installed on a newly renovated Cal Ave plaza just by the Caltrain station. So the sculpture was installed in 2015. We invited the artist back in 2017 to come and inspect the piece and just address any maintenance concerns, which he did. He did a very extensive treatment project back then. So it's been almost 2 years, and the sculpture is due for another maintenance treatment. So earlier this spring, we invited Mike Zaba to come back to Palo Alto. He's residing in San Francisco now, and just assess the piece, just let us know, give us a sort of an estimate and a scope of work of what sort of treatment the sculpture is in the need now. So the artist visited the site and got back to us with the following proposal. He's proposing to to perform a comprehensive inspection of the piece itself, the plumbing, the motor. Also, the sculpture is due for good, stain oxidation cleanup. You can see that. Okay, so this is how the sculpture looked right after the treatment in 2017. You can see that the trunk is really clean of any mineral buildup and debris right here. You see this like even dark warm color. So this is the condition of the piece today. You can see some mineral buildup along the trunk of the piece. And just another close-up, there has been some alteration to the original patina that needs to be sort of touched up and brightened up again. And just, this is a comparison shot of a detailed shot of the piece back in 2017 and today. So you can see sort of the scope of work that needs to be addressed. And then just jumping, there's another piece by Mike Zaba here in Palo Alto, Arch Cradle. This was actually his first public art commission. It was installed in Mitchell Park in 2008. So the last time we really thoroughly treated the piece was back in 2015. We had our crew since then just do some sort of preventative cleanup and maintenance, but it's really time for another, in-depth inspection and treatment. So this was the shot that I took earlier today. Overall, the sculpture is in good shape. It does need some cleaning, and you can see some streaking here on the metal parts of the sculpture. So the seams, the bronze seams, the patina needs to be brightened up. And also we notice a couple of areas of corrosion that just needs to be touched up and addressed to just stabilize those areas. So the artist came on site and took a good look at the piece and just again got back to us with a detailed proposal for his treatment. So today we are requesting the approval of funds for both pieces in the amount of $8,000. The artist will be performing treatments for both artworks himself.
Hey, thank you, Nadia. One quick question. Did all the rain we had this past winter really speed up the need to clean up these two?
I don't think so. We took a good look today comparing images both for Confluence and Arch Cradle. And, I think sort of the level of mineral buildup and just is lesser than in the first 2 years after the sculpture was installed, for example, because it was waxed, and so it was really well protected. But just because, for example, Confluence, it's a water sculpture, right? So it just requires that ongoing attention and care. And then in relation to Arch Cradle, the sculpture is located in a very active site. It's been, kids and adults actively interact with it on a daily basis. So it's just time for another maintenance.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, can I ask, when these pieces were acquired, is there a discussion, I don't remember, I wasn't around when these were acquired, but is there discussion about the maintenance usually? About these pieces, because I don't know a ton about collections, but and maintenance in terms of these pieces. But I guess my question, I feel like we've come so far in this day and age for some of these pieces, we can kind of, are there preventatives to think about?
Well, that's some of what we're doing, is preventative maintenance. So especially fountains notoriously require regular ongoing maintenance. They're mechanical, you get mineral buildup. Those patinas, as the previous presenters mentioned, patinas need to be maintained and take some time to take care of. And part of what we would be doing, particularly for Arch Cradle, which is out in the sun, has no protection, and frequently gets kids climbing on it, which is fine. But the wax coatings that we put on, whether we send our maintenance crew to do it or the last time Mike Sabo went and did a deep treatment of it, it doesn't last forever. So a lot of this is to address those aspects of corrosion, grind some of that out, clean it, halt it, and then protect it. So a lot of what we're doing is preventative maintenance, but at the same time, we're addressing some issues as the collection ages. And to answer your question about was it discussed in 2008, the Arch Cradle piece was installed in 2008, maybe a month after I moved here. And so I remember it being installed. The project, at the time, there were no maintenance funds set aside. It was only a few years after that we were able to lobby for and get an annual maintenance fund for just this kind of project. So at the time, that wasn't set aside. Now, as we're being more proactive and having larger projects, we are able to set aside maintenance for those projects as our maintenance burden grows. But these projects that were previously commissioned really rely on our annual maintenance allocation.
Yeah, thank you, Elise. And about 70% of water projects is you don't see. It's like an iceberg, so.
Yeah, well, I do want to just, excuse me for making comment, I think it's something that just kind of when I was just trying to make a brief comment earlier, with the presentation, that I think it would be helpful, at least for me, I don't know if other people find this helpful, but I think that when we are talking about pieces, whether it's, temporary or permanent, that there should be more kind of a discussion about pieces and about their maintenance and care, because I think it's something, although I shouldn't say that we shouldn't do it, but I think it makes a difference if we think about the long-term care when we're thinking about putting works together. And I think museums ultimately are working on that too in other places, so.
It's absolutely right, and that's something we really try and be proactive with when we're commissioning artworks, is what is the maintenance plan for an artwork. I think one of the pitfalls that sometimes programs fall into is they want to commission artworks that are maintenance-free, and that really doesn't exist. You're doing maintenance on your building, you're doing maintenance on your park and on the retaining wall. The sculptures also have to be maintained.
Yeah, that's why you have a lot of stainless steel, cut stainless steel projects around. And that's a good point. Maintenance is always something that needs to be discussed with it. And I think Palo Alto is one of the few communities that actually allocates money for maintenance to public art. I know other communities don't, and maintenance is an afterthought. So, I mean, it's a good point, and we need to always bring that up when a piece comes forward about that. Okay, we have a motion to approve this item.
Actually, so before we do that, for the fountain, I'm curious what your thoughts are. Like, I don't actually mind the patina changing, and I think it's kind of nice to see it evolve. And I think, yeah, you have to fix the mechanical stuff so the thing works. I don't know of the expense, and I don't know how you think about that in terms of if you see a piece that's copper or bronze that patinas over time. What are your thoughts about just letting it evolve?
Well, there are a few things at play there. As you get more buildup on that face, it really affects quickly how the water flows. Fountains are extremely challenging to design and maintain for that reason. So as you get more buildup, you'll get water that wants to pop off of the surface, and it'll affect it, and it becomes more expensive to clean later. The other piece to keep in mind is that the central shaft is intended to be in contrast with the exterior. That was the artist's intent and how the piece looks. And I'm not exactly sure as far as corrosion, what happens if you let that central shaft really go, but I do have some concerns about it.
About the structural integrity of it?
If we just allow it to go. But I think more importantly, the intent is that the artwork shouldn't look like that it needs to be cleaned and maintained to look the way it was commissioned.
Okay. What was the original budget for this piece, and how much have we spent on maintenance? And with this new, I'm just kind of curious as we think about other fountains. I know we talked, I think that I'm going to be loath to do any other water pieces, because I think that it was not an insubstantial amount to do the first batch of maintenance.
That's true. Maintenance for fountains is very substantial. And that would definitely be something that we would have to discuss going into the future. As a side note, this was the first fountain project that I worked on, and I didn't understand why so many of my colleagues said, I will not do fountains. And after we did this, I understood why. They're extremely complicated. And we're really fortunate that a lot of the pump maintenance and a lot of the mechanicals are maintained by our partners within the city and parks. So what we're really maintaining is the sculptural centerpiece of it.
Okay. Do you recall what the budget was for the previous maintenance that we've done for the piece?
Yeah, so it was actually very comparable to the current quote. I believe it's something like $300 more than what the artist estimated like 2 years ago.
So of the $8,000 we're spending for both pieces, Is it roughly 50/50, or is it
No,
more,
I
much
would
more of it on the
say,
fountain?
I would say it's probably 5,200, 5,300 for the water piece, and then 2,700 for arch cradle.
And so it was 5,300 this year in 2019. In 2015, it was another 5,000. What was the piece initially? Do you remember what it was, what we budgeted for this one? It's so long ago.
Well, it was an extremely
This
complicated
is one of the ones where it
budget,
took years to eventually do, right?
because the budget for the overall fountain, we pulled from a lot of different sources.
Right.
So, I mean, overall commissioning a fountain, that, I think the estimated budget was about $200,000 by the
Okay.
time you put in everything else. The public art program did not pay that for the entire thing, we paid a portion of it.
Right.
But they're expensive
Yeah.
projects to commission and
Expensive to maintain.
expensive to
And to
maintain, which
maintain,
is
yeah, that's-
absolutely right.
So we should be planning on, so $5,000 every few years-ish. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
A motion?
I move to approve.
Second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And then the last item is a non-action item, which is an update on the public safety building artwork.
Great, thank you so much. So, since we were here last in December and the commission approved the 4 artworks, so there were 3 that were integrated at the PSB site, and one of those public safety building pieces was sited across the street on the garage. And in the course of negotiating the Phase 2 contract and getting deeper into budgeting, and of course, you know that the garage is currently under construction, at least the parking lot to prep it is. It does not appear to be feasible to do the LED artwork across the street, but we're still under contract negotiations with the artist to do the other 3 artworks. So that was the one on the exterior of the public safety building and the 2 interior pieces, the thumbprint piece and the black and white piece. So I just wanted to give a brief update that that's the direction things are going and gather any input from the commission.
Hey, thank you, Elise. And how does the artist feel about the light part of it?
I think initially there was a little bit of heartbreak, but I think he's excited about the other 3 projects, so
All right, good, thank you.
we're hopeful.
All right, thank you. Hey, any, Jim?
We weren't able, this budget just didn't permit? Or what changed?
There were budgetary issues, and also in the garage schedule and what kinds of requirements would be needed for the LED.
Okay.
Is there money if you wanted to do a 4th one in the building or on the PSB?
You mean at the PSB site? Well, right now, there aren't many spaces left and available, which was sort of a scramble the first time through. There are, other things that the staff there would like to have available in the lobby as well.
Hey, thank you. Any announcements? Hey, next meeting is May 16th, I believe.
We have just a couple of calendar items.
Oh, okay.
Quickly, I promise. So, the Americans for the Arts Public Art Pre-Conference date is June 13th. So if any of you are interested in looking at that, go to the Americans for the Arts site for their annual
Minneapolis.
conference.
Is it Minneapolis, the conference?
In Minneapolis, that's right. There are a number of art fairs on next Friday, the 26th, if any of you are interested. There's one out at Fort Mason, and there's also Startup Art Fair. Those are both next Friday, which is always kind of fun. And I also wanted to announce that we just put together an opening event at Avenidas for May 29th from 3 to 4:30. Artist Martin Webb will give a brief presentation,
right.
and we'll be able to tour the site. So we hope you all can join us.
All right, great,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Elise, Nadia. Thank you, fellow commissioners, and have a good night. The meeting is adjourned.